What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, saying you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles and a solution for someone's problem. And also, I'm a certified empowerment coach, but I love conversations, especially with new people who I find interesting and are growing. And tonight we have a new friend. Well, he's a friend I've met, but he's a new friend to Blab and a new friend of the Dr. Vibe show online. I had the privilege and opportunity to meet and share with this gentleman. He shared back with me a few months ago at the Toronto Urban Book Fair, put on by Stacy. And a big shout out to Stacy for bringing not only this gentleman to the event, but others to the event. And I saw this tall black man. I'm going, all right, he looks cool. So we just began chatting and hanging out. And I said, you know what? If you want to come on and share about you and your book, the mic's open. So traded some emails back and forth, and here we are. So we have Jedah Mayberry on the conversation tonight, and looking forward to find out a little bit about him, but much more about what he writes about and why he writes what he writes. So Mr. Mayberry, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us tonight.
Thank you much for having me. I'm very pleased to be here. Very pleased.
It is a blessing to have you. And what we like to do on all our conversations as much as possible is, can you share a little background about yourself?
Yes, I am originally from southeastern Connecticut. So not a lot of people know that about me, but it is a theme that kind of plays into the book. So born in New York City, my father was a Navy brat. My father was in the Navy. We bounced around quite a bit and then finally settled in Connecticut. So from, I think, all through school, from kindergarten on, I was in the southeastern Connecticut area, and just really, it was a good place to be. I've been away from there for many, many years, and it was an opportunity to just think back on all the influences I had, people I met, things that I saw, things I encountered that I haven't seen other places. And when I sat down to write something, home just flooded back through me. And that's really where the story was born. I had something else written, another manuscript. I like to tell people there's a point in time where I thought every book written had to be set in New York City. So I had something that started in New York City, and it just wasn't going where I needed it to go. So it took me going back home to get to breathe some life into a book and to get another manuscript off the ground. So that's how I wound up with the book that's in hand today.
Good stuff. And we'll certainly going to spend the most of our conversation time about the book, but I want to get a little bit more reflection about you growing up in Connecticut.
Sure.
What was that like, and how was that like, and how did that influence you to the man you are today and the author you are today?
It's different than a lot of places. So I have, just by way of a little more background, I've been up and down the East Coast. So I started in Connecticut. I lived in New Jersey for quite a bit of time. I spent a couple summers in the DC, Baltimore area, went to school in North Carolina, went to school in Georgia. And Connecticut is different than any place I've ever been in that there is diversity there. People don't expect me to say that, but there is quite a bit of diversity, including, a large Native American population. And in the time that I grew up, the diversity wasn't so great for it to be an issue. We didn't have lots of difficulty, lots of trouble, because we were just so few in number to stand out, for people to really be bothered by. But there are things that growing up, you always encounter those things. Certain kids you used to play with at an age of 13, 14, you couldn't play with those kids any longer because we were becoming of age to start dating and to start maybe, engaging their younger sister. So they pushed us away. So I did experience a few things there, but nothing like, when I went to North Carolina. That was a completely different world. I went to an historic black college, North Carolina A&T, where the minority was flipped the opposite. I was, in a majority black situation, not a predominantly black, but just historically black. So that was a different experience for me, going from Connecticut and then going somewhere where everyone looked like me. And a lesson I learned very early on is that even though someone looks like you, they may not be like you. They may not have your best interest in mind. And that was a little bit surprising to me. I can go back and I can lean on people and call on people in Connecticut who maybe don't look anything like me. But down in North Carolina, I encountered some people who, a guy tried to steal some donuts from me just to, to tell a short story. And a guy who just looked just like me just surprised me a bit. So it gave me a whole different perspective on how to engage people. You got to get to the core of the person. You got to talk to them. You have to understand a little bit about them, and you can't judge on face value.
Two other things that you shared already that I'd like you to get some take on was,
Sure.
What was it like growing up in a military family? And what was family like? Like you had mentioned your father. I don't know if there was a mother around, but how was the family life in your younger days? So if you could just share those two areas with us, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So the military life, it forces you to make fast friends because people are there for brief periods of time. You may see your best friend might live next to you for 2 years and they ship out or you ship out. So met a lot of people over a short period of time and, got along with lots of people. That's the one thing it teaches you to do. And you're going to have people from really all over the world, every ethnicity. So whatever diversity there is in Southeastern Connecticut is probably even more so in military housing because of the people that the military attracts. So I think that was a big experience. So I've got an older sister. It's just the two of us, my sister and I. Grew up with both parents until around the age 10, and then my parents split up. So we wound up, and that's kind of how I spent so much time in Connecticut. Had my parents stayed together, it's very likely we would have shipped out and moved somewhere else. My father, in fact, eventually moved off, went to Hawaii. So I was raised, my mother raised my sister and I. So we spent from 10 years until I went away to college, in the house with my mother, my father, kind of half a world away, as far away as you could go and still be in the United States by moving to Hawaii.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you overcome that situation? Because that can't be easy.
It is not easy. And one fortunate thing is that I'm the younger of the two. So my sister took it in a different way. And I think it hit her in a different way and probably held her longer. For me, it was the kind of the simple things, the everyday things. I was big into baseball then. Little League was my life. And there were lots of things that my father, taught me how to hit a curveball. He taught me how to hook slide. He taught me lots of things that, I took onto the field. The first year he was away, I refused to play baseball. I did not want to play baseball because I just felt like I stood out like a sore thumb. Everybody knew that my parents split up. But my mother insisted that was part of my normalcy. I needed to get back to baseball. So I did. I played that next year. But then afterwards, I just let baseball slide. I grew several inches in that time frame. Basketball became more interesting. But baseball is my first love. And even in my writing, I find it's interesting. You don't know what you really love until you look back on the things you've written and things that creep in. Baseball creeps into lots of things that I write because it's a time where, especially as a young boy, you're learning yourself, you're learning your capabilities, you're learning strengths that you have, you're meeting lots of different people. And I just had to do it those last couple of years without my father there by my side. So that to me was probably the biggest single hardship, was having to go back into a sport that I love, that I learned through him, and then had to go at it alone.
Well, you know what? I thank you for being honest and transparent, because some, especially men, would not even go there. Yeah. So I appreciate you going there, and I know it's not easy. When did writing start to become part of your core?
It's actually been a long time coming. So I started writing when my eldest daughter was born, in those wee hours of the morning with a kid on your arm, and you can't turn the TV on because it'll disturb the rest of the household. And I just started doodling, kind of dabbling. And by the way, she's a freshman in college now, so that's how long I've been writing. It's been quite some time. But it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago that I finally took a workshop, really an extended, 6-week, 8-week course. And it was exploring the idea of short story writing. and the skill that it took to do short story writing. And I remember sitting in that classroom and was just blown away by one or two people really stood out in the class. There was one woman who talked about ox blood, and she just described things in a way that I never imagined, but I wanted to be able to do that. I wanted to kind of capture an audience the way I saw her do. So I continued to work, continued to dabble, continued to write, and continued to take workshops. And that's actually where the book was finally born, after, several workshops and just a lot of writing to myself, maybe sharing with friends. But it's been a 10 plus year process of, becoming a writer.
Let me ask, it sounds like for many years it was in here that you wanted to write.
Yes.
When did it go here? What made it go from here to here, the writing passion?
I think it was really the need for a creative outlet. There's a period of time where you're consumed by your kids and their needs are, that's what you focus all your attention on. But then there's a point in time I was kind of, well into my career at that point and needed something to express myself creatively. Work is what pays the bills, and there's a creative aspect to what I do. I'm an engineer by trade, but then there's another part of creativity that I wanted to tap into. And it's more than, seeing numbers and equations come together. I get some enjoyment out of that, some excitement out of that, but creating a world and putting someone in that world and see how that world, they interact with the world, how the world impacts them, that's another creative outlet. And I just needed something to put my energy into, and writing became the thing.
Okay, so you make a decision, it gets in your heart to write.
Yes.
Before we go further, just want to welcome C. Will Builder on the conversation. If you want to jump in and ask any questions of Jedah, no problem. Feel free. Same too with Chris, because it's interesting. Chris was on before you came on, and we just started talking about books, and tomorrow night I'm hosting a conversation, what are your favorite leadership books, part 2, and he's in the process of writing his first book. So
excellent.
There's a relatability piece
yes.
for him there too. So you made this decision to write this book.
Yes.
The book I'm holding up here. You made this. So what'd you do? You said, okay, I'm going to do it. What was the first thing you did after the decision?
Well, again, I had a manuscript that preceded this book, and I shopped that manuscript for quite some time. And I finally encountered a publisher who she asked me for the first, chapters, typically what they do. Then she asked for the first 3 chapters. Then she wanted the whole manuscript, and I'm getting excited at that point. And she ultimately sent the manuscript back, marked up and read all over. And yeah. But
well, so do you remember when you received that back? What was your first feeling?
My first feeling was I was heartbroken that it came back, because we had gone, 3 stages in, a chapter, 3 chapters, the whole manuscript, and then to finally get the manuscript back. If someone doesn't call you back, it's usually not good news. If they send you by snail mail, they're just telling you, thank you for your time, thank you for your effort, but it's not going to happen. But then I sat it down, and I probably didn't look at it for a good month. And then finally I opened it. I looked at it, I knew it was in there, but I opened it and I started to work through it. And I realized this person liked this story and liked my ability enough to take the time to mark it up. She would not have marked it up had she not liked something about it. But I still felt like, okay, I need to explore a different avenue. I put that manuscript on the shelf. And part of her feedback was, being able to tell stories in a linear fashion. When you tell a story, start out with, like this current book, start out with Connecticut, then show me the town, then show me the family, then show me the people in the family, then get to the main character. Don't hop around, show me a character first, and then, by the way, they're in Connecticut. So she pointed out to me that there was just some skills that I was missing, that I was lacking, that if I wanted to tell stories, I needed to learn more. And that's where I took a couple additional workshops, and the book grew out of a workshop I took about 4 years ago.
And 2 important points you shared out of many about perception. I love how you said that some people could have looked at that being marked up, that manuscript, and just say, okay, I'm going to put it basically under the rug.
Right.
But what you did is you said, if someone took this amount of time to invest in it, it must be worth something good.
Correct. Yes.
I love that thought process. And I'm speaking it, if you're going to do a lot of these conversations,
Yes.
Can you make sure you share that thought process that you just shared right there with many people, because many people need to know that kind of thought process.
I will. Very good. And
that was powerful. That was like, if you're watching this either live or on replay, if you don't get anything else from what Jedah has said, capture that. That was money. Like, boom. That was a knowledge bomb right there.
And equally interesting, in her comments, it became evident a point along the way that she was angry at me. Angry that I hadn't possessed the skills to put it in a place that she could move forward with it. And that's what really compelled me. I've got to do something with this now. You know, I can't go back to that publisher, particularly not with that manuscript, but I know I've got to put my energy into something that can see the light of day, can get to the open world. And the fact that she was angry, that showed passion. That showed that she was probably at her desk, hope against hope. I hope this guy has what it takes for me to publish this work, and ultimately decided I just can't. But that said to me, she liked it that much that it moved her to anger. And, you know, that speaks for itself.
Man, you're good, because I just want to piggyback on what you're saying, that two more things, that a lot of great ideas have a birth, death, and resurrection.
Absolutely.
And also
like
too,
that,
yeah, it's true. It's a perfect example. It's a birth, and it had a little bit of a death, and you resurrected it. That was huge. And then also, anger is not always a bad thing.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's not always a bad thing. So you get through this stage. And so did you take it to another publicist or editor?
I went through the process of the current book and learned quite a bit more. It's just amazing when you think you're capable of something, you think you have a certain, you know, ability somewhere, and then you go through a growth process and you learn so much more. And then you're at another stepping stone of, let me make it even better. So that manuscript I have since dusted off, picked up, reworked considerably, changed the title, and in the course of it, found just a whole other theme of what I was trying to say. And before, I believed it was just a coming of age story. That book, that manuscript happens to be, the protagonist happens to be a young woman, a teenage girl. And I think that's what this publisher struggled with the most, that I was trying to speak through the voice of a woman and she never did anything. Things happened to her. So I internalized that feedback and reworked the book considerably. So this young woman grows up and I take her into, you know, her late 20s, maybe just into her early 30s. And everything that she encountered, every struggle that she overcame as a young girl, she then turns around and tries to put to some good later in her life. So that manuscript, I am, you know, with The Unheralded King into the market and going, I'm now shopping that to publishers. So that has promised to be book number 2.
So let's focus on this book that I was so pleased to purchase at the book fair, The Unheralded King of Preston Plains Middle. First of all, how did you come up with the title?
I really, the unheralded part is I like a hero that people don't see coming, that they possess something that you don't see at first glance, but that person knows that they have it in them. They possess this thing that is out of the ordinary. It's you know, a capability perhaps that they've worked on. So that was the unheralded aspect of it. The Preston Plains part is, I picked a part of Connecticut that it's kind of the urban center. Norwich, Connecticut is the urban center of that part of Connecticut. Lots of diversity, lots of strife, lots of difficulties like any other urban center goes. but it is surrounded by these almost rural areas. They're, completely the opposite of this urban center, but because of the population density, these kids from a Preston Plains area eventually migrate to Norwich Free Academy, to the high school in Norwich. So I've got a kid who's got brown skin, stands out on one side of town because of his skin color, gets to Norwich Free Academy, to NFA, and stands out for an entirely different reason, because he doesn't fit in with those kids. He didn't grow up with those kids. He doesn't understand the urban strife. But the one skill set he has that's out of the ordinary is he's practiced martial arts, has ambitions of going to the Olympics to practice, Taekwondo. So that is, people don't see him coming, and he can defend himself. He can protect himself if he needs to. But that is his, the gem that he possesses. I even think of it as, when you write characters, people tell you, give each character a secret. That's his secret. He walks around knowing he can protect himself if he needs to, but not wanting to. He wants to fit in. He wants to be part of this new environment. So that's where the title came from. Someone inherited, and I picked a part of Connecticut where kind of a fish out of water goes to other water that he's not comfortable in.
How much of you is in this book?
There's a good amount.
And if not, you are either experiences you had or seen indirectly.
It is probably a conglomeration of things that I've seen. Maybe I didn't experience directly. I mentioned the part about my parents splitting up. That is probably the one scene that I wrote as true to my real life as anything in the book. So you mentioned being transparent about it. I felt it was important to talk about, because it talked about, at that age, at 10 years old, the most devastating thing that can happen to you in your life is your parents breaking up or the loss of one of your parents. But it also spoke to the strength that my mother exhibited, the way to pick the pieces up and move on, the way my sister and I leaned on each other, but then found our own way, found our own friends. It was kind of like we'd look back at each other. Are you in a safe harbor? Well, good. I'm in a safe harbor, and we can go off on our own. But then there are other things just about, some of the anecdotes that are in the book are just from people I saw, nutty things that I saw people do, things that I've seen people struggle with, meeting your first girlfriend, talking to her on the phone and not having anything to say. Those are things that I've experienced firsthand, as I'm sure many people have. But the one way the book is different is that I've got an older sister, but I've never had a brother. And I really wondered what it was like to have an older brother, and for a younger brother to draft behind that older brother, experience sort of vicariously the things that he's done. And then I tell you, in the first chapter of the book, the older brother passes away. So now I take that anchor out of the younger brother's life, and that's where the story takes off. So that is unlike my life, but something I wanted to explore.
How difficult is it for you as a writer to provide situations that you haven't experienced? So you just shared about the brother piece. Right. Was it a difficult thing for you to approach? Was it challenging, or was it something that you found? Obviously you found a way, but was it difficult getting there? It was
incredibly difficult. I knew starting out that was the theme I wanted to explore: a younger brother who loses his older brother. But as I wrote toward that, that event, I almost talked myself out of it. What if the brother lives? What if he's incapacitated? What if? And I did a lot of what ifs. And then I thought, no, for it to really be impactful, I have to take him away. I have to put this young man on his own and have him flounder a bit, have him take some wrong turns, get himself into trouble. But taking the older to that point and letting him go was extremely, because I became fond of him after writing him for many months. Many pages in, I wanted him to stay around, but that's not what the story needed. And that's the tough thing as a writer, knowing what to put in, what to take out, and allowing something to play out in the interest of making the story better.
I always like to have book writers share about their journey getting that final piece out. And the two things I always like to have them share about is A, were there any moments along this journey that you wanted to say, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm going to just put it aside. I'm going to just put it under the rug. And if you did have any of those moments, what got you to pull it back from underneath the rug?
Writing is just I think a long period of questioning and self-doubt and little glimmers here and there that say there's a little something more, keep coming, a little further, a little further. The publisher that I worked with, I think that is what really got me to the point that I felt like I had something and something I wanted to see through. So I submitted it lots of places and finally submitted it to a publisher who he called me on the phone. We're talking for 20, 30 minutes. And finally I asked him, well, when will I hear a decision? And he tells me, I assure you, if we hadn't already made a decision, I wouldn't be on the phone with you right now. We wouldn't have talked this long. And then when I shared the title with them, they were sold. They loved the title. And it's a longish title. And I didn't realize how long it was until I started doing things on Twitter. And by the time I tell you the title, I've exhausted all my characters. So I've had to come up with KOPPM as my hashtag, King of Preston Plains Middle, to keep it short. But this particular project, once they got on board and we really started working, I started working with the editors, with the graphic designer, who I could not have done this cover without his help. I expressed a vision.
That's a big cover. Yeah. Can you share some of the people that have made this a rewarding venture for you?
So my mother first and foremost, because she's retired now, and this has given her, so she's my best salesperson. This has given her another thing to do. And my grandmother, who at 93 is still with us, still very lively, and she's my next best salesperson. So getting a book in front of the two of them, and even as I continue to write, I'll publish a short story somewhere, and my mother will print it out because my grandmother's not really on the internet, but she'll get it to her, and just being able to share that with them, even going back to Connecticut. I've been back there a couple of times for just family visits, just personal visits. But in the last fall, I was invited back on the Connecticut Authors Trail. So I represented the Preston Plains Library as their author, and encountering people that I had grown up around, and I knew them, they knew me, but had no idea that I wrote. And at that time I didn't. And just seeing them, the way they've embraced me, and just, really love the fact that I'm out here doing it. I'm making an effort. I'm putting myself out here, and that I accomplished something. I put a book in the market, and a number of my friends have bought and showed up for me to sign the book. So that's a weird thing. Somebody you grew up with, maybe even had a little crush on, and she wants you to sign a book for her. Fantastic. It's not a problem. I can do that. So that has been extremely, gratifying, sharing it with people who have been in my circle forever and ever.
I'm jumping around a little bit here, so I'll come back to this part. Can you give a synopsis of the book for our audience who haven't had the privilege of reading it or seeing it, only seeing it basically through my video camera?
Yes, so the book is a coming-of-age story, and it starts with it's basically a mother loses her eldest son, and the other son loses his only brother. The father is estranged, living across town, but it has an impact on him as well. There's a grandfather, and I was particularly close to my grandfather. So I have to have a grandfather in nearly every story. I can say things in a grandfather's voice that maybe I don't feel comfortable saying at my age. There's a wisdom that he possessed that I try to breathe into the book that I think is appropriate to come from an older voice. So the grandfather is standing by, trying to hold his family together. And the younger brother, when his older brother passes, gets into a world of trouble. He gets into all kinds of things that he shouldn't, and it's our job as the readers to try to get him back home. So that's the journey we take with, the younger of the two brothers. It's Langston and Trajan is the one who endures throughout the book and just encounters lots of difficulty, partly stemming from his parents' breakup, but mostly stemming from the loss of his brother. His brother was, his, I like to call it his guardrail, his guide, the one who kept him on the straight and narrow. Without him, he went off track a little bit.
And what you just shared there's some more thoughts in my mind here. That, first of all, I don't hear about too many books that are authored by men
Yes.
about the relationships of young
Yes.
boys. That is something I don't hear about. Did you realize that as you were
Probably
writing or thinking
directly.
about writing this book?
I mean, I know that I can look back at, from the age of 13 to 16, 17, by happenstance, by whatever, just fate, a number of us were from, single parent households. Generally a boy and his mother, maybe another brother, maybe another sister, but at home with their mother. And there are lots of things that I like to say that we grew each other up. There were things that I learned from my friends and vice versa, that had we either been on our own, not had those relationships with one another, I don't think we would have gotten as far as we had. Had we been more sheltered, had we been, traipsing behind our respective fathers, we would have learned what those fathers knew, but we wouldn't have learned what, the other, just the other households, the things that they experienced, good and bad. I mean, I talk about my parents splitting up, but all told, we had it pretty decent. We weren't rolling in it by any stretch, but we made ends meet. There was always a roof over our heads. There was, people were welcome to my home. My friends could come to my home. There are places that I call second homes. There's a guy who I'm sure his parents were tired of me because I was at his house all the time, but I needed that. I needed someone who was in I wouldn't even say a more stable situation, because my situation wasn't unstable, but he had lots of brothers and sisters. There was always people around the house, and I gravitated toward that. So to me, the relationship between young boys is a very natural thing. We don't talk about it. Women talk a lot more about their feelings and who's my friend, who's not my friend. Boys just, I hang out with you. It's cool. Can I stay over? You want to come stay at my house? And when it comes to critical things to talk about, we talk about those critical things. That same friend of mine, he's got daughters a little bit older than mine. And I've asked him, how do you deal with the boys coming over? And he's given me lots of great advice. Just keep the lines of communication open. Whatever they tell you, keep them talking. So those relationships have been important to me over the years.
I'm going to ask the feeling amongst three people when this book went into their hands for the first time. So I'm going to start in reverse order. When you gave a copy of this book to your grandmother, what was her reaction?
I know somebody famous. Yeah, she felt like, wow, I know someone famous now.
Wow.
Can't wait to tell the world.
Wow.
And I don't even know if she'd read a page of it at that point, but she just seeing the book, having it in her hand, her grandson's picture in the back of the book, I know someone famous. And she's, a long time in New York, grew up in Harlem, raised my mother in Harlem. So she's seen, Luau, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. She's seen lots and lots of celebrities along the way. So it meant a lot that my grandmother was pleased to know me, if I can say that.
That I've never heard that.
Yes.
That man, I wish I could have been there for that moment.
Absolutely.
That must have been I'm sure that's an unforgettable moment for you. What was your mother's reaction when she first got a copy?
Let's get to work and let's get these books sold. So let me tell people who are going to buy books, not just to tell people so they know that my son is, but somebody who will buy a book and, help get these books sold. So she has been really the champion of, let's get it to the outside world.
And it's interesting. One of the things I share with people is, if there's a concept I have called what is your core message? which is basically, what are you all about? And I always share, especially with the younger people,
Oh
that
yeah,
if you don't know if your core message is good or not, share it with your
very
mom.
good.
If your mom gets it, you're on a good roll.
Absolutely, yes.
So your mom definitely gets it, and she's rolling for you. And then finally, what was your reaction when you got that book in your hands for the first time?
A little bit of disbelief because there were so many doors that closed along the way, and as I mentioned, just the string of self doubt. So a little bit of disbelief that it really happened. It was really in my hand. I could really hold it. Um, but then a big sigh of relief that it's one thing to put in lots of effort, to put your blood, sweat, and tears into something, but to then see the end result, to see the reward of all that effort is just very gratifying. So a big sigh of relief. I got this done. I got out there, and that takes a little bit of time to get over because you don't want to. The book being published is not the success. The opportunity to perhaps write another book, to continue writing, continue sharing my work, going around and even sharing this book with people. That's where the satisfaction has to come from. But my initial reaction was a big sigh of relief. I got this done. It's an accomplishment, something that no one can ever take away from me. Thank you.
Nice. Congratulations on that. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I want to get back to the fact of being a man, writing a book about the relationship between young boys. And from your journey in life and what you've written in the book, what are your thoughts, concerns about young men at this time
Yes.
of history? Because it is central in your book. It's a strong theme of your book. What are your thoughts outside of the book about, do you have concerns about young men
Absolutely.
growing up in the
And
society we're in today?
with age comes wisdom, comes maturity, comes lots of things. But I look back and never encountered the kinds of things that I see young men encounter today, where I'm mistaken for so many things. I wrote an essay once and I ended it with something along the lines of, I'm somebody's husband, I'm somebody's father, I'm somebody's brother, I'm somebody's son, I'm somebody's grandson. And when I walk down the street a certain way, a certain size, a certain demeanor, not everyone sees that. Um, I was really, really thrown by just a couple of things that I've seen in the past, half dozen years. Eric Garner, you know, killed in New York at the hands of the police, really stood out for me because he was a father, because he had children who lot more young women nodding their heads and resonating with the story, because I talk about falling in love and falling out of love and heartbreak, being heartbroken. And generally, it's not until after the session that I'll have a young man come up to me and say something to me about how the story spoke to him, or how he reacted to the story. So the reaction is a little bit slower, but I think they're responding as well.
Nice. Well, we're winding down with our conversation, folks.
Yes.
And if anyone, CJ Ripka says, I want this book. There you go. Well, I'll see if I can find the link for it online and post it in the chat session. And also, it's interesting, we have Danielle Booz, who recently wrote a book about her journey, her personal journey. And she can relate to what I'm sure she can relate to what you're saying. And Danielle, if you want to chime in, or if anyone who's in that journey of wanting to write a book, you can certainly ask Jedah what his experience was, or just piggyback on what he's had to say. With writing this book, you say you're more observant. Has it changed anything in you?
I think it has not forced me, but encouraged me to look at personal relationships a little more closely. It's one thing to sit in a train station and observe people as they go by, and I have no investment in their lives, they have no investment in mine, but I try to imagine scenarios. What are those two people arguing about? What are they going through? What are they going to have for dinner tonight? But I've now turned the same thing to, people in my circle, people that I either work with, encounter every day, my friends, my family, and seeing what they're going through, trying to understand where they're coming from. I can hear a conversation between two people, and you'll hear the words that are said, but until you sit back and recognize this person is afraid of something, and that's what's causing them to say the thing that they're saying. It's not that they're angry with the first person. They're afraid that whatever's going to happen, they're going to lose this person, they're going to anger that person, they're going to upset that person. So I step back and not just hear the words people are saying, but observe, where are those words coming from? Why are they taking, that stance? What's driving their point of view? So that's one thing I learned from just studying a group of characters and having to look at it from every conceivable angle. It's just not the dialogue that comes out, but how did they arrive at that place to have that conversation at that time? I've carried that into my personal life.
What education have you gone through
about the book business has been partly self-driven. There are lots of books out there. I wish I could, I don't have them in front of me, call a title, but even through the publisher I'm working with and them working with me on marketing, it's a lot of legwork. It's a lot of getting your name out there, getting your face out there, letting people know you're there and not being ashamed. I have these small cards that have a picture of a snippet of the book cover on it, the title, my information. I give that to anyone who comes near enough to me to be able to reach a hand out to them. And I've been surprised by the number of people who carry it somewhere and do something with it. So being vocal about what I've done and being unafraid to share it. Someone who's just absolutely not interested, they're not going to be interested no matter what you say to them. But there's some people out there who may not have even considered the person standing behind them in the grocery store line wrote a book. And I bumped into someone the other day. Oh my goodness, I'm looking for something new to read. Well, here you go, right here, and in the grocery store. So being vocal and unafraid to promote your work.
Nice. Danielle, if you have a moment, I'd love you to come in because I'd love you to trade that your experience of writing your first book with what Jedah's experiences of writing his most recent book. If you have a quick second, I'd really appreciate that. So, and I love how you had mentioned, or you're much more, absolutely, I guess for lack of a better term, you have your periscope always up, when it comes to getting your book out there. It's very important because the best
Yes.
salesperson
Yes.
for your book
And I
is
found there
you,
are
the one
lots
who
of
wrote
bartering
it.
opportunities. I've handed a book to an author who was at a book signing, and I mentioned I wrote a book, and he said, "Well, where is it?" And I handed one to him. So that is, it's
Ah,
being unashamed, being unafraid, and recognizing that you're in the same boat as them. You know, he's got a bigger platform. He's got, you know, just more visibility than me, but he appreciated that I'd written something and that I came to him in a way to do an exchange. I'll take your book, had him sign it. I gave it to my mother and my grandmother, handed a book to him, and asked him to share it in his circle. So, yes.
yeah, it's, people can learn from this. You know, be always opportunities. Opportunity. There's always opportunities for you to put yourself out there. You just got to be have your periscope up, and if there's an opportunity out there, you certainly make it happen. Danielle, are you coming in? You said you're coming in. Hopefully, you're going to get in the next few moments because oh, here we go.
Yay, I'm a little dark, but I'm here.
Hello, Danielle.
I was getting a little one to sleep,
Okay.
and I got
Hey,
that
Danielle,
done
what is up?
successfully. And I was like, I gotta get over here. I gotta get on here. I love to hear authors because that's my new thing. So
Yes.
I've been.
What would you like to
I
ask
think you
Jedah
answered
about
a lot of
whether it's his
the
book or just
original
authoring in
questions
general?
that I had in reference to the promotion. And it really sounds, the common theme I hear is you have to promote it. You have to do the work. So I found it interesting about the grocery store and sharing in the
Yes.
grocery store, because I've recently started doing some similar things.
Yeah.
I guess my question would be, creatively, have you used anything other than what you've talked about to market in a creative way that's maybe different than what everyone else does?
Yeah. One thing I did that was really my wife's idea.
Mm-hmm.
I was an avid skateboarder growing up.
Okay.
If I was moving, I was rolling. Yes.
Oh yes. This
And
is good. I
I,
remember this now. Go ahead. Go ahead.
skateboarding
I
was so
remember
much a
this
part of
now.
me
Go
that I
ahead.
wrote it into the book. My
Mm-hmm.
protagonist skateboards everywhere he goes. For Christmas, my wife's trying to decide what to get me. So she bought me a longboard and had the cover of the book embossed on the back of it. So I now carry that with me when I go to book events, and it's particularly important. There's a certain age group that an author is coming. We're going to have to read. This is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But you show up with a skateboard, and people crowd around you.
Yeah.
And then I can talk to them. Then I can tell stories because they're playing with the wheels. They're looking at it. The most interesting thing is rolling through the airport in Toronto, and when people see a guy over 25 riding a skateboard, they want him to fall. They're hoping I'll fall. But I'm not new to this. I ride skateboards. It's what I do. And I knock on wood or knock on something, I'm not going to fall. But that is something I did out of the ordinary. And it's really cross promotion. So the company who, Board Life, who made the board for me, they have been gracious enough when I publish something, they pass it along. They forward it to their followers. And I've had as many skaters follow me as I have readers. Hip hop is a theme that plays in the book. I use hip hop to bridge the younger brother and his estranged father together. The younger brother discovers music that he'd only heard from his father before, and it fills the gap between the two of them. And I have on Instagram, on Tumblr, on various places, I'm as likely, I posted something today, just an interpretation of a song title from, Nasir Jones, Nas Escobar.
Okay.
And I will talk about hip hop as much as I'll talk about, literature and culture, or hip hop is a part of culture. So those are things that I'm trying to cast a wider net, and it's just things that interest me. So it's not gimmicky, it's not made up. I'm reaching out to people who I think resonate with things that I resonate with.
Awesome answer.
And and it's so true. And I'm glad you brought up, because that if
Absolutely.
Jedah remembers when we met,
Absolutely.
I was asking him
Yeah.
about that skateboard.
Yeah.
I said, "What is
Yeah.
this brother doing with
Yeah.
a skateboard?" Smart marketing.
Yes.
Smart marketing and cross promotion. And for those out there who are, wanting to get their first book, there's some good nuggets dropping here. And Danielle is a recent
Absolutely.
first-time author. I'm getting there, and I'm learning a lot of good lessons. Danielle, anything else you want to ask or comment
I'm still skinning in what he's saying. You got my wheel spinning over here.
Yeah. One other thing I'd advise is form some association.
Okay.
So there are many places I've gotten into on the strength of the Texas Authors Association that, as one lone author, I may not have gotten into. I've been to book festivals. My book has gone to book festivals and gone to places that I haven't been with one association or the other. So use those associations to, an association can get a booth, have, a half dozen tables, and you can get time at one of those tables, and you don't have to try to command a booth on your own for the entire duration of a festival. So associations are another, good piece of getting your name out there.
Okay. Thanks.
Very good. Next, I'm working on a couple of things.
So what's up next?
This manuscript that I have in hand, I'm calling Sun is Sky. And the theme of the book is it's a young woman who is trying to grow up, trying to be like her mother, but not be like her mother, not follow every step her mother took and every mistake she made. So she's tasked with trying to separate sun from sky, kind of in a loose way. So I'm still shopping that. I've also just started. I haven't released the first issue, but I've gotten agreement from, there's a site called Chanillo, Chanillo, that I did it as kind of a mock cover, a mock book cover. I saw this kind of sci-fi picture of a little black girl, and she has a look on her face like, I'm going to take over the world. And she's got a huge robot standing next to her. So I'm now embarking on a sci-fi series that I'm calling The Meek. So look for that on Chanel. I haven't issued the first piece of it yet, but it's in the works. I've got some pieces written, and I've got to get enough strung together so that I can periodically, maybe on a 6-week basis, drop a new issue of the series. So those are the two things in works at the moment.
Where does the love of sci-fi come from? Because I thought you were skateboarder bound.
I mentioned I have a background in engineering. So doing the research in sci-fi almost feels natural. And thinking about, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, what is transportation going to look like? What is education going to look like? What does housing look like? The engineering side of me wants to do that research, and I can get lost in the library for 3 hours just looking at, the future of transportation. But then there's got to be some storytelling behind it. I just don't want a bunch of aliens and bombing going on. There's a cultural thread to it. And for the meek to inherit the earth, the incumbent has to either benefit from it some way or be overwhelmed by it and can't prevent it from happening. So that's the theme that I'm really trying to explore. How is it that the meek kind of rise up? And there has to be a common threat against everyone, and everyone benefits from the meek inheriting. So that's where I'm trying to go with the title.
Nice. I'd be remiss because you dropped it. Who are some of your favorite hip hop artists?
Unfollowed. And it's gone over the years in themes. There was a point where, Eric B. and Rakim was all I listened to, and LL Cool J, there was a period in time. I'm still, it's not a popular thing because he's too popular, but I still really like Jay-Z just from he represents an irreverence, but an irreverence that recognizes it's a business, and he's making his way in the business. And then Nas, I just think his storytelling is amazing, and he puts it in a song, he puts it in lyrics, but he tells these prolific tales. And probably if I had to list my favorite group of all time right now is The Roots. And it's just that They're a live band, number one. And just the storytelling and the way they put it out there, brash, in your face, this is hip hop, take it or leave it. That's the kind of stuff that I listen to.
Good stuff. Well, a little history. I actually saw there was the first time they came to Toronto, the absolute first time in Toronto. They came to Toronto, and at the time, I was actually working for their record label representative company in Canada, and never forget, because the night before the concert, traditionally hip hop concerts don't sell well in advance. That was that time. It's different now, and the record company calls me up the night before. We're worried. This is not selling. Call the promoter. Says, don't worry, man. Hip hop. That's the way hip hop is back in that time. Large walk up. So get ready to go to the show. I get near the concert hall. There's a lineup 3 blocks long for tickets. Love it. And then so going into the concert, it starts. Yeah. I see some guy with an afro pick and in his head come up with 2 Techniques 1200s and hypes the crowd for an hour. And I just went, I'm done. And then the Roots came on, and they gave absolutely one of the best concerts I've ever seen, ever seen. And like you said, real instruments. Yeah. And that was back in the time where Razel was their front.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Do You Want More? Yes, is a classic. The Godfather of Noise. Yes. Actually, we became good associates for a while, and he gave me his phone number, and his voicemail messages, his introductions would have him beatboxing. And sometimes I just wanted to call him and hear the message. And if I got him, I couldn't care less. Kinte, that is good stuff. Actually, believe it or not, I actually have Roots vinyl from back in the day still here in my house. That album that you mentioned, Do You Want More? I know that in my place I have vinyl copies of that album.
Was walking by my daughter's bedroom door and listening to Run DMC and the Beastie Boys and the Roots, and she's got some vinyl in her room, so it's a great thing. Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, this is good. Well, on that note, Jedah, thank you so much for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to share with us tonight. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Danielle, best of luck. I'll be looking for you out there.
I appreciate it. You as well.
And if people want to touch base with you, Jedah, how can they do that?
Find me on there's JedahMayberry.com. You can find me on Book Launch. Look for Jedah Mayberry on Book Launch, and you'll find places to get the book. You'll find places that I'm, currently doing work, and on a daily basis, I'm mostly on Instagram, a little bit on Twitter, but Instagram is the way to find out the pulse of me on a daily basis, what I'm thinking, what's going on, and what's moving me.
Excellent. And I'm going to put his Twitter handle up right now. Actually, I just took a look at this post. Who is this with the microphone and who is that? That's a good picture. Oh, starts a symbol, Get Down. Who is the picture in this?
I see this post on Nas, and Instagram. It was just wordplay. He's got a title. The title of the song on his Godson album is Get Down. And when I think Get Down, I think about a party. We're going to go dance. We're going to go, cut a rug, whatever you want to call it. And in the course of that story, he talks about his best friend being falsely accused of a crime in the courtroom. He grabs the bailiff's gun, and everybody better get down. And then he goes out of town. He gets hemmed up. Some people try to rob him. Some people try to do something to him, because that's how people get down. So in a 5-minute song, he used get down 3 and 4 different ways, and it's just a simple phrase. And that's the kind of, just the storytelling that comes out of hip hop.
That was well done. When you becoming an MC?
The food I eat to put stories back on paper. So some of them come out looking like hip hop. Some come out in a different form, but I've studied hip hop to get there.
Excellent. And I also see, as we're winding down here,
yes,
you also
yes.
published some stuff on the
I
Good
talked
Men
quite
Project.
a bit about. Thank you. Yeah, my grandfather.
Congratulations.
Lots of stories, just lots of things I was trying to work through. I published one story. I don't remember what I called it, but I was selling a car, and I realized that was the first car in my lifetime that he never saw, that he never encountered firsthand, because that's what we did. When he bought a car, he told me. When I bought a car, I told him. And this was a car that the entire, birth and death of that car in my hands went, unseen by him. So I published something on Good Men Project. I think it was called The Last Cadillac Man. Yeah. Bygones. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Bygones?
Yes.
Yeah, Bygones. Actually, I'll put the link up for it right now for everyone to read it. Yeah, I'm also been publishing content on the Good Men Project for about the last 3 years. So definitely I'm the only online show that publishes something regularly on their platforms. But if you want to read a great article, there it is, people. So he's giving you all he can. Right. Plus, do you want more? Well, of course you want more. So go check him out on Instagram. Go check him out on Twitter. Go check him out at his website. I'm Dr. Vibe. I'm host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. If you want to touch base with me, the Twitter handle is there. I try to put my email address in this, and it for some reason doesn't come out. So if you want to email me, it's drvibeshow.com, which is THEDRVIBESHOW.com. As always, God bless, peace be well, keep the faith. And tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, we're doing a conversation, part 2. What are your favorite leadership books? With Galen Bingham. So enjoy the conversation. Have a great evening. And thanks for stopping by. It's appreciated and not taken for granted.